Welcome to Conscious Conversations, a place where East meets West, a place where conversations and ideas will challenge your minds, expand your consciousness, awaken your heart, and make you think more deeply about yourself and the world.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Conscious Conversations. I'm Anthony Profeta here again with Wes Gordon. How are you today, Wes?
Very well, very well.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you to everybody who's been watching, and this is the final show for the year 2020. How does it feel for you? Happy this year's over, or?
Yeah.
Same here. I mean, there's so many people I know that are like, can't wait for 2020 to be over. They think like at midnight, I think like the world's going to drastically change at like the stroke of midnight and all this. But I think we still got a ways to go for things to change and for all those sort of stuff to happen.
Like an old parable. Maybe it's going to be good.
Maybe it's not.
We'll see. Either way. Yeah.
That's right. The Chinese farmer.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a very good one. But so this right now, 2020 for many people, again, there's so many that are just want this year to be over and done with. And if you look back on 2020, there is a lot that could be said about what happened this year. And a lot of research is actually showing that it increased anxiety, it increased stress, and it increased, above all, fear. Fear began to run rampant throughout the year of 2020, and there are big reasons for that. But the truth is, if we want things to change, if we want 2021 to be different than 2020, then it's not just like a ticking of a clock is going to make things change. It's not like just fingers are going to snap and things are going to change overnight. Things need to happen. And what really needs to happen for things to change is we need to change. And if we keep doing the same things over and over again, like if we live tomorrow the way we live today, then and think that tomorrow's going to be different, then that falls into that category of that well-versed definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results.
Yes.
So if we want to 2021 to be better, or if we want to make 2021 a year of less fear, then what we need to do is we need to change the way we think, the way we speak, and the way we act. And so that's one thing that maybe we could talk about today, maybe moving into 2021 with less fear or living fearlessly in 2021 rather than, continuing to live in this state of fear and anxiety that we find ourselves in 2020 now. So what is your whole idea of, how the world has succumbed to so much fear?
Well, due to, all the things that's happened, we already feel like we're isolated.
Right.
So let's just amp up that scenario. Because you were physically, hey, stay home, don't go out, do anything.
Right.
So you already didn't feel connected, and you were kind of choosing who to be connected to or not. And you and I both know that deep interconnection is what everybody overlooks. Like, wow, that's just a matter of fact. That's no big deal. But that's really the most important connection that you need to have.
Yes.
In order so that you don't live in fear or feel alone or isolated.
Right.
So for me, during this time frame, the meditation teachers have become very popular because you have a large answer to the solution of not feeling so isolated. Yeah,
that is true. However, there's many people that want like some magic pill, like they think that they just change things overnight. And for some people, the work that's involved in meditation and mindfulness practices and the commitment that it takes to these things, they want the results tomorrow. Yeah. And sadly, there's not many things there is a magic pill for. And most things in life take work. And when we want to change from living in fear to living fearlessly, that does take effort, that does take discipline, and meditation and mindfulness practice definitely help you in that, but it's definitely going to take determination and commitment on your part to these practices to help you make that switch from fear to fearless. Now, fear in and of itself, though, does have some benefits. It is necessary for survival. To be afraid of things, or in some ways like cautious fear, is good. Like if, there was an animal back in the day that was going to make a meal out of us, it was a good idea to be afraid and maybe get into the fight, flight, or freeze, and either fight it, run away, or do whatever you need to do to get away from that fearful animal or whatever it might be.
Yes.
But sometimes fear can overwhelm us to the point that it causes us to be like frozen and not do anything, not change, just sort of become static and not progress.
Right.
And that's something that we need to overcome in terms of living fearlessly, because we don't want to get stuck or frozen by fear. And another thing about fear is that very often it's not really an animal now
Right.
or something else that we're fearful of. It's just our mind that is now creating
Yes.
and becoming developed to live in terms of this now fearful mentality.
Yeah.
And that has become perpetuated by, in many ways, the media and by outside circumstances that is now creating us to just be afraid of almost everything.
Right.
And what happens with the mind is if the mind keeps dwelling on something over and over and over and over and over again, it begins to solidify that sort of dominant quality or trait within itself.
Yes.
So if you focus on something negative, you begin to eventually see more negative around you.
Yes.
If you focus on positive, you begin to see more positive things around you. And so if we begin to keep dwelling or thinking and conceptualizing about things we think we need to be afraid of and all these things that we have to be fearful of, then what happens is we solidify and the body becomes the mind of fear.
Yeah.
And then fear begins to rule us throughout our entire life.
That's what's beat us down as a society, because we're actually like the cooked frog. We're in it so much. We've forgotten how it feels not to be fearful.
Right.
The flight was used to get you away from something trying to eat you, but now we constantly live in some level of that fear. I came out of meditation one morning and it was shown to me how much I'm controlled by fear.
Right.
Even the subtle little things.
Oh, yes.
It was way beyond what I'd ever imagined. I was just I was blown back going, whoa, this is an epidemic.
Right.
I'm in such a survival, fearful mode. I can't even feel love or connected because I'm too scared of everything around me. And it's all in my head. It's like scared of what your boss will think, what people will think, how society will look at you.
Yes.
It ain't about the tiger chasing me down, trying to eat me anymore. It's the things just in general,
Yes.
the social thing.
Yes.
Wow.
And once we're living from that mentality, we're no longer actually present to life, and we're no longer responding to life when we're living in that instinctual fight, flight, or freeze, which the fear mentality triggers us to live under.
Yes.
We're living under what is called the limbic system of the mind, which is they sometimes refer to it as the reptilian part of the brain, like just the instinctual part that's not the forebrain, which is higher consciousness, higher thinking, all of this sort of stuff. When we're living in fight, flight, or freeze, the blood flow actually flows to the back of the brain, which is the limbic part, and the more reptilian, again, they use that, but some psychologists and scientists don't actually like that term anymore, but it's often referred to as the reptilian part of the brain. And when we're doing that, we're not actually responding wisely to life because we're living in a survival instinct.
Yes.
And so when we're doing that, we're actually just reacting. And in very often, the cases to react to what life is presenting to us isn't always the wise way.
Right.
And so we want to try to switch that. We want to try to get out of that mentality. And I like that you brought up the fact about, you can't, I think you said, live in love when you're in fear.
Right.
And, there is a very common, I'm not exactly sure, maybe per se, but I think it might come out of A Course in Miracles, where they talk about basically life is between two choices of love or fear.
Right.
Was that Course in Miracles?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So, and the truth is that there's many traditions that do affirm that when you're living in fear, you can't live in love. And in the biblical terms, there's a quote that says, perfect love casts out all fear. So it's like the two can't exist together. And when you are living from a state of more presence and in love with things, you are coming more from the frontal part of the brain, the higher conscious part of the brain, and you begin to respond to life more wisely than we do when we're living under the fearful conditions.
Exactly. And you add the pace of life and what it does to your health and the type of food that we're eating that doesn't reinforce good nutrition,
Right.
not getting enough sleep or rest, dump a bunch of caffeine or coffee on top of that.
Yeah.
You're going at the speed of
Hey,
light.
I love my coffee, though.
In moderation. Everything in moderation. It gets so out of bounds, you don't know yourself anymore. And
Right.
it's, you know how easy it is to control someone when you get them into that state and keep them there for prolonged periods?
Yes.
It's very easy to manipulate and tell you something, and you'll just out of desperation say, okay, I'll do that.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
you said, you don't make good sound
Judgments anymore. We're not actually logically and critically thinking about things. But I think we need to take a break right here. But stay with us. We'll continue our talk on fear and how we can live fearlessly in 2021 when we return right after these messages. Welcome back to Conscious Conversations. I'm Anthony Profeta, and I'm here talking with Wes Gordon about fear and how maybe in 2021, rather than continuing the cycle of how fear has increased this year, living fearlessly in the year to come. And there's a Sufi poet, his name is Hafez, and he once wrote, "Fear is the cheapest room in the house, with the worst view, I think. Permit me to show you something more suitable. And I would like to see you living in better conditions." Yes. And I like that a lot because, fear is a very sort of cheap, shabby room and way to live our life. When we're living in fear, we're living in tension, we're living in turmoil, we're living in sort of fear of many things, on the unknown, fear of what tomorrow may hold. And there are reasons, for many people justifiably on why fear did arise this year. Many people overnight, their lives were turned upside down.
Yes.
Rugs were pulled out from under them. And then all of a sudden, well, what does tomorrow hold? If all this stuff that I thought was my life, can be taken away from me in the blink of an eye,
yes.
Who knows what else can happen? So there were instances where that was, justifiable. But we want to try to not allow the mind to rule us, to keep us in these negative states for long and accentuated periods of time. And that's what seems to have happened in this year, is that the cycle of fear, it wasn't just like, okay, there was this incident and we were fearful for a period of time and reset. It's like it just continued to escalate, and fear of everything. There's a fear of, what if this happened? What if that happened? What if this? What if, the test comes back positive, or all these sort of things. And that what if begins to, as we were mentioning before, concentrate in the mind this mental quality of just living in the mind of fear. And then fear begins to rule our life. So how can we sort of overcome this? Is there ways to, conquer that in a way? Do you have any tools or tips?
It's back to the now clock, living in the moment, being real. The lesson that I hated with a passion. Because this lady would pull me back in and say, "Wes, calm down. What's wrong? What's going on?" And my world was coming to an end. I lost my job. I was facing all those tragedies. And
right.
I thought that was me. I thought that was me. That job was me.
Right.
But it wasn't. And what she would say, "Are you breathing right now?" Yes. Or do you have enough food to eat? Yes. Do you have a roof over your head? Yes. Are your bills paid up to this point? Yes. And she goes, "In this moment, are you okay?"
Wow.
And I went, "Yeah." She goes, "Well, that's because you're in the now moment. That's where you need to live and make your decisions from that place."
Right. I love that. That is, while I saw the face you just made, while you might not have wanted to hear it at the time,
yeah,
that's actually a powerful concept to fully grasp and live.
Yes.
Because when we're in the moment, we're taking the mind out of these sort of negative states of dwelling in the past or projecting into the future, of the worry, the anxiety, and the things we're upset or regret about. And what that does is it narrows the focus to here. Mm-hmm. And in the moment right now, it's usually not that bad. Okay, so it does help us to bring us back to, okay, what is that? But what I really like that she did to you was she shifted your perspective onto what it is that you do have that you could be grateful for, or
Yes.
what, the roof over your head, the food in your refrigerator, whatever it might be,
Yep.
because that helps to focus on what you can be positive about in your life. The thing about fear often thrives in darkness. Like your car breaks down on a country road in the middle of the night, and all of a sudden when you're waiting for like the tow truck, your mind is thinking about all the terror that might be in that forest waiting to come get you. Or the phone rings at 2:00 in the morning, and immediately the mind starts going to, if someone's calling at this time, it has to be bad news. And so the darkness and is sort of the instigator or the exaggerator of our fears.
Yes.
In fact, one of the great spiritual sages, one of my favorite, Master Yoda, said that fear leads to the dark side. And so we want to always, like that person shared with you, try to stay or find the positive or the light in the dark. When we're hearing that things around us are falling apart, when we're hearing that the world is getting turned upside down, is there any silver lining we can look to? If we can, then we can begin to pull the mind out of the propensity to keep going back into, I need to be afraid of this, or what if, or what if, what if, what if, what if. And if we can focus on the positive, then it can help us to overcome those fearful moments that we do have.
Yeah, that's why I went running off into meditation. I mean, to find that stillness and that peace.
Right.
I mean, I didn't go there willingly. It was a fire underneath me that said, hey, there's got to be something better. You've lost your connection with Source. You've forgotten how important this love and energy that's keeping you alive and giving you breath is actually supporting you. You've lost that memory, that connection. Through meditation, that was reestablished. And boy, when you make that connection, you don't want to let go of it.
Right. There's another thing in terms of psychological research, in terms of fear, and they say that fear arises from us trying to avoid 3 types of pains. The first one is the pain of loss. So we're scared or afraid of something because we think, if I do this or if I try this, then I might lose something. Like if I really go try to fulfill my heart's purpose and passion, I might lose, the 401k I have right now, or the secure job that I have.
Right.
But the antidote to that is to actually not focus on what you might lose, but focus on what you actually might gain by following, what it is you want to do, rather than focusing or fearing that loss. The second one is the fear, or the fear of the pain of change, which is we're just stagnant. We're afraid because, change is hard, change is difficult, and I might not be exactly what I want right now, but I know that at least what I have I'm okay with and I'm comfortable. So we have this fear of change, and so we avoid life because of the pain that might come from the change process. But the antidote to that is to look at it as a challenge. Because if we look at things sometimes as a challenge, we get motivated to try to, accomplish things and persevere through it. The third pain they say we're trying to avoid is the pain of the outcome, which they mean, if I do this, or if I do go through the change, what happens if nothing gets better? What happens if my life actually just stays the same? And that actually is correlated to anxiety. We actually become fearful or anxious of what the future might hold because it's unknown. And fear and anxiety are actually interrelated. Actually, the great Chinese philosopher Yang Zhu, he said that little fears cause anxiety, but big fears cause panic. And fear and anxiety are interrelated because, and most people don't actually realize this, but anxiety is a type of fear that comes from the thought that something in the future is going to go wrong. And so if we can sort of think about not what's going to go wrong, but try to focus on what can go right, we can actually help alleviate certain fears and anxieties in our life. And that's, again, why meditation and mindfulness, as you keep bringing up, can be very powerful, because it helps us to really focus and center and help us to really see things clearly. Maybe where we're not looking at things as the big picture or from the right perspective. And it can help us get clear insight into into certain aspects and help us to get out of those fearful states of mind.
I've talked to a lot of people when they ask me questions about that, when they get all confused. I said, well, life is actually like a math problem. When you don't know how to do it, you see it as a big, complicated, stressful thing. But if you'll just take a piece of it at a time,
Right.
which is in the now, and figure that part out, the next part shows up, you figure that part out, and eventually it's solved.
Right.
And in actuality, they only come at you in pieces anyway. It's your imagination and mind that blows them up into overwhelm.
Right.
Too much, can't handle it.
Handle it.
It's just like trying to clean your whole house by picking up one end of it and trying to dump it. You can't do it, but you can go in a little room at a time and fix it.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And that's actually well known in psychology too. A lot of times anxiety comes from too many choices.
Yes.
And so if we have too many things that we need to think about or too many choices to make, we get anxious, like, well, what do I choose? What do I do? Where do I start? And if you just break that down, like you're saying, into smaller little...
Chunk it down.
Yep. Little nuggets or little pieces or,
Yep.
Prioritize way you should go, then we become less anxious and less fearful to get started and motivated. Another thing that we can do, though, is actually, we can't say, like, fear is just totally negative.
Right.
Because everything has a positive and negative aspect to it. And fear can actually have a very positive component.
Mm-hmm.
And fear can be very motivating also. So if we can get fear not in front of us, but get fear behind us to actually push us or motivate us in a particular direction, it can be very helpful. And psychological research has shown also that if you think about something like that can be your worst fear, it can actually motivate you to make great changes. So, For example, if let's say your diet is so unhealthy, right? But you know that, well, I'll try to diet again, but it's never worked in the past and all this sort of stuff. If you can think about, well, what would be the worst thing to happen to me if I don't change my diet? And then you think, well, I could get diabetes and lose a leg or a foot or something like that.
Right.
Like if you can really come up with something that is like the worst case scenario, the fear of that thing can actually be the great stimulant for you to make the best change for you in your life.
Sure.
So if we can pull fear into under our wing in a way to become something that we can use, then it can actually have a beneficial component associated with it.
Positive perspective.
Yes.
Turn it into something that works for you instead of against you.
Yep. But I think we need to end there today, and it's been wonderful talking with you. I hope that all the listeners out there have a really blessed, beautiful, happy, abundant, prosperous new year. We thank you for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in 2021. And again, we hope that this year is a year of fearless living for you. Thank you all. We love you.